Welcome home, horror fans. My name's Adam.
And I'm Zoe.
And today we're looking at a very special deleted scene from sawx.
We certainly are. sawx gave us over 40 minutes of deleted scenes.
A lot of deleted scenes.
More than any of the other Saw films had. And we get a really in-depth look at Amanda Young.
Yes, a very important scene that was actually deleted from the film, which really actually gives Amanda not just more backstory, but really a lot more character depth. And we really felt like this scene probably should have been included in the film.
A lot more character depth. Having this scene in the film explains everything.
Yep.
It gives us an exact explanation of why Amanda is who she is. And I can't understand why it wasn't included in the film.
Yeah, we kind of feel like, I think that maybe Amanda was a little bit robbed by deleting this scene, because Amanda is great in the movie and we love having her back, obviously, but she in a sense is very sidelined, I suppose.
In comparison to John, absolutely,
Yeah.
because we know that this is a John Kramer film. It's been announced that it was a John Kramer film for a very long time. We always knew that was going to be the case. But having the reveal of Amanda in it halfway through the film and having her be such a prominent role in the film, you still feel like there's not much given to her character. Nothing really elevates who Amanda is, except for in the deleted scenes, which is, it's very surprising that they wouldn't include them.
That's right. So in this particular deleted scene, we have quite an amazing interaction between her and Parker and her and John as well. And obviously we get a little bit of this and we get some really nice emotional connection between Amanda and John. But in the particular deleted scene, they really go hard for her character and they really open her up.
Those who don't appreciate life don't deserve life.
So a few things of note are happening in this scene, which are really cool. And I guess opening up from this exact part of the start of the deleted scene, we do see a much longer conversation between her and Amanda.
Between Amanda and
and
John.
John.
Yeah, we absolutely do. We see that conversation in the movie, but it's definitely expanded upon in this deleted scene, where Amanda addresses John as her mentor and as her teacher.
Do you remember who said that? My teacher, my mentor.
And she explains to him that he can't just give up now.
Now he's just an old man who's giving up.
He's someone who she needs in her life.
Then fight.
I won't give up.
And yeah, it's just really in depth compared to what we get in the film.
Yeah, you get a really strong feeling from Amanda that this almost, I guess, because there's a bit of a question with Amanda whether she's in love with John, and maybe that's a romantic love, or it is more of a mentor / father figure.
I definitely think this scene tries to rewrite that story, because in Saw 3, it is alluded to that maybe Amanda has feelings for John that maybe she shouldn't. She doesn't just view him as a mentor, she views him as someone who she could be with. They have a scene later on throughout the franchise where she even seems jealous of Jill when Jill comes and visits John. So definitely they are trying to rewrite the story here and have her view John as more of a mentor.
That's right. This has been referred to as jealous girlfriend syndrome.
Yes, by Mr. Cece's World.
By Cece's World, which I'm sure a lot of people are very familiar with Cece's World. And I think that you do get the feeling that there is this jealous girlfriend syndrome coming from Amanda, especially in Saw 3. Anyone else interacting with John, she seems like a little bit jealous and she wants to be the favorite. She wants to be the only one. This scene that's deleted, though, really comes across more as definitely, I mean, she specifically calls him, obviously, her teacher, and it really does sort of more build the idea that she sees him more as a teacher, more as a father figure. She really crouches down in front of him, like she's saying goodbye to her father more than they're in love.
Yeah.
And I think that is a really nice distinction in this film. It also leads on to the idea that he tries harder going forward. So obviously this is pre-Saw 3. This sort of leads on to the idea that she is motivating him to get help, possibly obviously with Lynn Denlin, and getting this crazy operation that happens in Saw 3, because realistically it shows him before he may be a little bit defeated, taking out Cecilia in the way that he does. This does sort of paint a picture that Amanda is the person that actually tells him, hey, don't give up. What are you going to do? Just die.
She pushes him to fight. She pushes him not to give up. And I think that between the two of them, I really like this idea of that dynamic that they're trying to paint in sawx. I think that it works so much better than having Amanda be a jealous girlfriend
Yeah.
and just be obsessed with John this whole time in one of those ways. I think they paint Amanda as someone who has some very obvious Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
And I like the idea that she does view him more as her father, a father figure and her mentor, because, shortly after this scene, we get some insight on what her father was really like growing up.
Yes, it humanizes her a lot. And the other thing that was deleted from this scene was her interaction with Parker shortly after her very emotional John scene.
Is he your father?
And with Parker, we see something that she hasn't mentioned before.
No, she hasn't mentioned before. I think it was alluded to in a Saw 3 director's commentary, but never anything that's been shown on screen or in the films. Parker asks Amanda if John was her father after he witnesses this interaction between them, the emotional interaction. And Amanda says, no, he's not my father. My father was a drug addict.
My father was a criminal, a drug addict.
So following in her father's footsteps there. But not only a drug addict, but a child molester as well.
He molested children.
Yes, which watching the deleted scene, you sort of watch her mention her father being a child molester, and you're sort of like, oh, geez, that's, this is something you haven't,
stuff.
it's heavy stuff, and you haven't heard this before, and it's not great to hear.
No.
It's something that I think could have really built her character quite well if they'd kept it into the movie. Gives her a lot more backstory.
Yeah.
I mean,
she alludes to the fact as well that maybe she was a victim as well of her father's at a young age. And of course that makes a lot of sense for where Amanda is today and why she views John as such a father figure, because she never really had a real father figure in her life. It goes to show why she is the person she is.
Yeah, I think that the overall from the sort of two interactions that are deleted here, we get a better sense of who Amanda is, and they sort of actually get to create her sort of backstory in a much better way than we've really kind of understood before.
We ever really knew.
Yeah, because the film without these scenes kind of just show her being this slightly unhinged Amanda that we kind of know. But the one thing we have to say in this video is, after seeing this deleted scene, we went and did some research, and it's a little bit confusing with the timeline of Amanda, because obviously Saul likes to cut back and forth between everything. And then with our research, I think we found something that most people don't seem to realize, to be honest. I think from what we did, and we watched some YouTube videos about the history of Amanda, we went back and went through scenes from the films, tried to piece together her whole timeline. And what we really found was that Amanda's actually probably more innocent than anyone really gives her credit.
Absolutely.
I think that's the biggest deal, right? So looking at this deleted scene and then delving more into the facts from Saw 1, 2, and 3, we actually kind of found out that she was originally arrested, as we all know, on a false drug charge by Eric Matthews. But before that, she never actually did drugs. She was never actually guilty in any way. So the real timeline for Amanda is, obviously we know from this deleted scene, came from a abusive father, abusive family. A broken home, somebody who was into drugs and molesting. This is a person that obviously had a bad childhood, but growing up, she effectively was arrested for something that she didn't do. She clearly states to Daniel Matthews in Saw 2 that she picked up her drug habit in prison after being arrested on false charges, meaning she never actually did. She never actually did have a drug habit before that. She was completely innocent. And not until she had that drug habit from being in prison did she then also move into hurting herself or harming herself. And none of this really would have happened if it wasn't for, obviously, Detective Matthews.
Eric Matthews.
Effectively giving her a false charge. So all of this really, and we're talking about not just the false imprisonment, the reverse bear trap itself, obviously a test that was given to her because she was a drug user. And everything that happened to her after the fact was all none of her fault.
Yes.
None of it actually came of her own volition.
Exactly. And I think that that's why this scene that was deleted is so powerful, because it really does paint who she was and how she ended up where she was.
Yeah.
And in a way, she's very similar to how Hoffman ended up. And I don't think any of them were evil people to begin with. They eventually just ended up on a really poor path, and that was due to decisions that were made by them or forced on them.
Yeah, and you can almost just blame John for both of their
You really
trajectories.
almost can. With Amanda as well, we get another deleted scene in Saw X that explains that she is a programmer, a computer programmer.
Yes.
My associate Amanda here has dragged me into the digital age. She's a talented programmer and a gifted hacker.
And a gifted hacker, and this is where John sort of explains or gives a reason as to how she got the bank statements from Cecilia and how she knows who Cecilia scammed.
Yeah, so a further deleted scene that we also get on the sawx extra features is I thought kind of comical, to be honest.
It is comical when you first see it.
Yeah, it's a scene, or just to recap it really quickly, is in the main torture room when they do, when John and Amanda capture up the whole group of con artists and throw them into that area. The scene that we all know in which he reveals the bank accounts of all of the conned people that Cecilia has conned. He specifically mentions that they got all of those details because, and to quote, Amanda was a gifted programmer and talented
programmer and a gifted hacker.
And gifted hacker. And it's kind of funny to hear him say that Amanda, standing behind him, looking a bit disheveled and a little bit crazy, is a gifted programmer and a talented hacker.
Yep.
So I can see why they cut this out. But if we're to take it in a real sense...
Yeah, if we were to take it in account with the timeline, it makes sense because now we know, or well, I suppose it was always the thing all along, that Amanda was just a normal person aside from the fact that she came from a broken home. She didn't take up these drug habits or become a junkie until after she was placed into prison. So she very well could have had a normal life. She could have studied programming. She could have even been a programmer herself. We don't know because it's never shown before.
That's right. So if we're to take what these deleted scenes are presenting to us as to be true, then what we really know of Amanda is actually that she had an IT background and was a pretty normal person despite her growing up in a broken home. And it wasn't until Eric Matthews stood in and somehow managed to give her a false charge that her life went completely out of whack. She went to prison on a false charge, took up drugs in prison due to the fact that obviously she was wronged in this situation, comes out of prison, gets put in a reverse bear trap, again, for something that she's never wanted to be. And then even surviving that is taken under the wing of someone who's, all right, call him a serial murderer, call him whatever you want. John wouldn't agree with these terms. But taken under the wing by somebody who's into, killing people essentially, and the whole trajectory is taken away from her. These aren't choices that she made, and when you see this, you start to sort of build this picture of Amanda. It's hard to not feel sad for her or feel bad for her.
She's really just been manipulated her whole
the whole
life.
time. Yeah, everyone has kind of made those choices for her, and by deleting these scenes, unfortunately, they take away a lot of her character depth, and we really kind of just see the basic version of her in this film. We don't get to add much to her character.
No.
These scenes really added so much, and we got to miss out.
And I think for me as well, having watched these scenes, I was someone who, I loved Amanda, but I never really thought too much of her character. I just thought that she definitely needed to be elevated a little bit more. They seem to just paint her as someone who really is just obsessed with John, and who goes down the wrong path of just killing people rather than giving them an actual chance. But having watched these deleted scenes and having put together this idea of who Amanda really is, I really do start to enjoy her character a whole lot more. The level of depth to her character with these deleted scenes just makes it so much better. Yeah,
we get to have a really good idea of who she actually is, not just some crazed, unhinged, jealous girlfriend type. It's a lot. It's actually so much that one of the actual scene between her and John is like very emotional. It's hard to not get emotional to see the two of them interact. So it's kind of sad that was deleted. There's a couple of great deleted scenes. We've got more to talk about further in terms of deleted scenes. It's a shame. Apparently, Kevin, the director, did mention that they needed to get the film under 2 hours. So there was a lot that ended up on the cutting room floor. Some stuff that was fantastic.
Absolutely.
Mind you. Really, really great stuff. And the characters or the actors of these characters really pull this scene off too. So it's sort of sad, but amazing that we get to see the deleted scene at least.
Yeah.
Which is a really big deal too. So we just thought we'd, sit down, talk about this. It's a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big deal because obviously we kind of feel like sawx could have been a lot more for Amanda.
Yeah.
It did great for John. It really did.
Yeah, it did.
Rewrite a few of his sort of like say it was, things that didn't match up for John. It sort of made him what I guess the best version of John.
I think with it though, they had the opportunity to really round off and sort of perfect John's character and Amanda's character as well. And then of course we know the rumors of Saw 11 being something that will focus more on Hoffman's character. It would have been good to have those scenes with Amanda because at least then those two are covered. Now I feel like we need more of a story of Amanda's character as well. It's almost like we need a film based on just her so we can really round off who she is and perfect her character a little bit more. I feel like keeping these scenes in it would have done that just fine. So who knows, maybe we will get Amanda-centric film later on in the franchise.
Or at least more of her in Saw 11, of course.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think
but is that going to take away from Hoffman too much?
Well, I mean, you get a bit of both.
Yeah.
I would hope you get a bit of both. But I do think the deleted scenes also, it's probably worth pointing out that these deleted scenes, and especially knowing about sort of, I guess, the misdeeds of her father, are important to note because it sort of explains more the reason why she's searching for a father figure, searching for a mentor, someone that she can trust and love and is out for her, because she never had that. She never had that growing up, and her father figure that she originally had was a horrible one, and it makes sense that she would put that onto somebody else.
Yep.
More than ever, in terms of this deleted scene. So it just adds up so much more for Amanda. It makes us appreciate the character more than ever. Obviously, this film does that for John too. But with these deleted scenes, we really get to appreciate both.
Absolutely.
Very, very heavily. So it's a pretty big deal. And it's a good one to sort of talk about, I think, and realize, because it's very hard to put the timeline for Amanda together because she is all over the place, just like everybody in Saw. And it's cool to be able to sort of piece together her timeline and see how it all came together.
Yep.
So yeah, it makes a lot of sense when you really think about this. It makes so much sense, of course, with her and Detective Matthews, how much they hate each other, because he was the guy who started this whole thing for her. He's the one that started the entire trajectory of her life going downhill. Yeah. So when we see her and him in that tunnel fighting it out, you really start to understand what that means to her. He is actually somebody, he's the architect of her destruction, and anybody in her position would feel the same way, would want to kill him. And it makes so much sense now that when you watch it, you look at it in a different light. For sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it's outlined very well in Saw 3 when she mentions that he destroyed her life, so she was just returning the favor. And I think, God, that line matches so perfectly with what we now know.
Exactly. Exactly right.
So just to summarize the whole timeline, because there's a lot going on here. We know Saw can be extremely convoluted. Amanda, early days as a child, she was brought up by a father who was abusive, who was a heroin addict, and as someone who would molest children, potentially even her as well. Amanda, after she escaped her father, would grow up to study IT and become an IT professional. Ultimately, she would end up getting in trouble with Eric Matthews, who would put her in prison for a false charge. In prison, she would then take up drug use, become a heroin addict, which she would then continue when she would leave prison. She would visit the Homeward Bound Clinic and try and get help for her misdeeds and try and become clean. Ultimately, it wouldn't work, but what it would do is put her on Jigsaw's radar. And then she would end up in the reverse bear trap for being someone who is a drug addict and someone who is not appreciating their life. After she'd survive, she would then go on to be a disciple of John and view him as someone who is a mentor and maybe a father figure as such. And then I guess eventually she would start self-harming, and her whole downward spiral would just continue from there.
Yeah, so it's very clear when you sort of do put the timeline together like that, you can literally see an A, B, C, D. It all follows on very clearly.
It fits perfectly. As much as they mentioned many times, it is the perfect puzzle. And I think Amanda's story, when you start to piece it together as we just have, it makes so much more sense. And I think the only problem with Saw being so convoluted and going back multiple times and showing multiple different things, especially still touching on it in Saw X, is you start to forget the order and where these timelines or events play out.
That's right. It is a lot to think about, and it took us a little while to put it together, and we had to double check a couple of facts just to make sure we had it correct. And look, it all seems like it's a perfect puzzle, like you said. Fit. And it's a lot to think about. So if you guys sort of like have anything to add, we'd love to hear your thoughts down below. I think that this paints a really amazing picture of Amanda, and we get to enjoy her scenes more, knowing how it all sort of, panned out.
How it would eventually pan out, yeah.
And how basically a lot of this really wasn't her fault at all. She was innocent from the start.
Amanda's innocent.
That's right. So I think that the deleted scene really did belong in the film.
It did, certainly. It would address moments and parts of her character that we just needed.
Yeah, so much. Otherwise, guys, we will catch you in the next video.
See you next time, guys.
Game over.